I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark.
I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
Hey everyone!
Hello everybody, and welcome to Arcane Mark.
Now stop me if you've heard this one before, but my character is a brooding elf named Drizzle, who has a magical pet Wolverine, who is his only companion, as he grimly goes as a lone wolf away from the rest of the team. Has no family. In fact, all of his family and friends are dead. And they're gone, and there are no connections to him except his pet Wolverine, whose name is Wolverine.
Or perhaps we have the character that is an adventurer because they like adventuring. Where did they come from? Who knows? Backstory? What's that?
His name is Bob. His backstory, well, as soon as he dies, retroactively his backstory is that he had a brother named Bob 2.
Yes. Bob 2 has suspiciously similar choices in all ways.
He looked up to his big brother and is exactly the same as him. In fact, after Bob 2 died, it was even more surprising, but we then learned that Bob 3 also existed.
Schrodinger's how many siblings are in this family? Just enough to not have to make a new character concept.
That's right. So there are a lot of times that, for various reasons, either because they want to be an edgy character or
maybe they have amnesia.
Yes, because they want to make an edgy character or because they just can't be bothered to sort of add more details to their character, or because they're worried that if they have anybody who is related to them, that will just cause them to be used as a plot element by the GM. A lot of players tend to make characters who are orphans, who have no real connections to things, and who just kind of appeared in this adventure, and you know what? Maybe they will connect with the fellow PCs and do some roleplay with that. That's about it.
I mean, but there is a reason why you have a bias toward those sorts of stories. I mean, one of the reasons why is that the kinds of things that adventurers do are fundamentally so incredibly dangerous that it is easier to tell a story that makes sense if they're just like, yes, we don't have family responsibilities of any kind. We can definitely go gallivanting about at this murder dungeon for coin.
I mean, that's totally fair. And you know what? Sometimes it's appropriate to have a character who was orphaned, and sometimes their family who died is a major element in the character's backstory and decision making, and come up like all the time, rather than just being like, yeah, just so I don't have to write them, they aren't there, they died, and we're not going to talk about it, but just be like pining for what happened, wanting to get revenge on the person who did it, and other things like that. Look, I've played an orphan character before. I've played characters who have other relationships with their parents that were really bad, but sometimes that can be more interesting than the orphan character. Like, I had one character who basically was tossed out by her mom for being defective. And then her mom wound up being one of the campaign villains at the end, who had teamed up with the villains in the pre-written adventure. Linda just added my character's mom to the mix of people that they had, who had like an evil version of my character's skill set, but like higher level. And that was a really cool element to it. In fact, tabletop role-playing games might have a lot of players who create characters that don't have a family, but if you look to books, movies, TV shows, how many characters have huge aspects and cores to them that are about someone in their family, and how many classic moments are based on people's families. Like, for instance, you know what? If the end of The Empire Strikes Back, and I'm sorry, but spoilers for people who haven't watched Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back.
Spoilers?
But if Darth Vader just said to Luke, after Luke is like, first of all, it's like, you killed my father, which is about his family, even though his father was dead, supposedly. If Darth Vader had been like, no, Luke, I once knew your father. We met at a pod racing one time, and he told me which pod to bet on, and I won a lot of money from that, and I always looked up to him.
Yeah.
And so I would not have killed him. Obi-Wan is just making this up because he's jealous he bet on a different pod. Then, you know what? That would not have been the same moment as, no, I am your father. Right? So this is because it's about family, it's like a big reveal that happens. It makes it like a classic moment in movies.
And when you're doing it in a tabletop role-playing game, you can definitely set things up so that these kinds of confrontations happen. So, for example, in one of the campaigns I was playing, my character and her sister were both very much into craftsmanship and armor and things like that. And they had kind of a rivalry about styles, but then they wound up ultimately fighting on opposite sides of a war.
Because Linda's character wanted to make armor that was like a beautiful piece of art, first and foremost. And of course, to the highest qualities, they were dwarves. And the sister was like, all of that stuff is worthless. It is a waste of time. This is being made for the military. It is about efficiency. It is about how many you can make to what standard of quality to outfit in a uniform way so that you can expect what's going to happen. You can drill training on people and get the same result each time. And so because of
my character's like, that's soulless.
And because of the fact that the sister was like one of the official armorers of the military, when they got to the point in this war, that the shadow war that was going on in the country for the succession, where one of the candidates was like basically had the military behind him, and the PCs were behind like the actual princess, right? So, and he was like the very conservative politician who was also a general and had the military behind him. Of course, the sister was working for the general. Yeah. And so
yeah, it became kind of like a metaphor for their differences in philosophy and things like that. See a question, was Linda's character basement armor wizard? No, she was a fighter. She wore the armor that she made.
That's
and
right.
The shield.
She was basement armor fighter. Yes. Although she was not usually in a basement.
No, generally not.
So she was like ground floor armor fighter.
Ground floor armor fighter, which, it does have armor in it still.
So, but the point is, like, if this was just like some person that Linda's character had met at like armor school or something like that, where it was like, yeah, I was training to be a smith at a big workshop, and there were like, 60, 70 other apprentices, and one of them said function matters more than form. Yeah. And then later they were the opponent in the Civil War. That's something. It's not nothing that you did that. Yeah. But it's a bit different for it to be her sister.
And then the parents were like, we love you both and we're not taking sides in this war. Please don't kill each other.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It just strikes differently in that case. And Chicory says in chat, if characters didn't have families, you wouldn't have the Fast and the Furious series of movies. There you go. Although that was a /sarcasm. The point is that, and Kojo said that Frogry was both the designer and the model for the.
Oh, absolutely. She wouldn't expect someone to go into battle in something she wouldn't wear.
That's right. So by telling these stories where we connect to the characters and their families, we immediately up the stakes. Now, as the GM, you might be tempted to immediately go to endangering families to up the stakes. And I will say it is appropriate sometimes to do so, especially if you have some kind of a villain whose power source is that they put political pressure in certain ways. They're connected to the underworld, and the character just openly has a family and is not taking any precautions to protect them. It might stream disbelief if, like, this, like, demon-worshipping, like, person who sends out assassinations in the plot that you've been following this whole time of how they take control of politicians by threatening their families. It's like, Yeah, but for some reason...
Man, your NPCs have done terrible things to some of my characters' families.
For some reason, this lady who does this to all these politicians just didn't do it to the PC's families for some reason.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the first thing you should think of every time is to go after the character's family. For instance, Linda's character's sister, who was the armor maker, like, yeah, they were on opposite sides. At one point, Linda's character needed to infiltrate that city. But she never killed her sister.
And there was
the guy who she was up against may have disagreed with them in a lot of ways, and he may have done some pretty bad things that he thought were justified, but he believed in honor enough that there was no way, especially since it was one of his best armorsmiths, that he was going to try to hold that over agents of another candidate for the throne. In fact, he considered them to be the illegitimate candidates. The legitimate candidate would not do something like that.
Yeah. And like in the campaign where bad things did happen to my character's family, my character did double cross a demon lord. So like then it's like, okay, you just antagonized someone incredibly evil, and you know you did that.
You double-crossed a demon lord, and then the party bards summoned the servitors of the demon lord into the mortal realm and told them that they could do whatever they wanted on their free time as long as they made him magic items for 8 hours a day.
Yes.
Okay? Like, in that setting, it wasn't so easy to get a lot of high-level minions into the mortal realm. And I was not even going to have the Demon Lord have managed to do something by the time the campaign ended, except for when the bard proposed to do that. And it was like, okay, honestly, she can't not take that.
Yeah.
And
we still did ultimately rescue them.
Yes, the party managed to ultimately, like, quadruple cross again. And then the bard was furious. And went back to the demon who he made the deal with and was like, I told you that you were going to make magic items. The demon's like, first of all, this was a combination of demons because all the demons love you guys because you're stopping the guy who's going to do something bad to demons from doing his plan. And second of all, the lady who did this works for the demon lord, is like the mortal enemy of my demon lord. So yeah, she's awful. Maybe she shouldn't have done that. And third of all, you made the deal, and you told her she could do whatever she wanted to on her free time. So even if we were devils who had to follow the letter of this, I think we did, right? I know you're mad at what happened to your party member's family. And the bard was like, what? I'm not mad about that. That was totally within her rights based on what I said. I'm mad that she got caught and killed, and now she's not making me magic items. She promised to make me magic items.
And the demon was like, wow, that's actually really reasonable.
The demon was like, you made a really good point, and I am going to bring that up at the manager's meeting. Also, I think that you and I think a lot alike. I thought you were going to give me this moralizing hypocrisy of, oh no, my party members, family members. For a party member who refused to help the demon cause like the rest of you guys were doing, because Linda's character had given up on that plan.
Yes. That was a very dysfunctional party.
Yes. It was very much so. But that was, it felt in the narrative and the plot line like it was justified, and Linda's character was able to like quadruple cross, kill that demon, and rescue the souls of her family members so that they could then also resurrect them. They were killed before and the demon was taking their souls to the abyss. But they got them back. Of course, Linda's character's sister thought that Linda's character had done all of that on purpose, and then this was a different sister. Because this time the characters were not dwarven armorsmiths. And then that sister, Linda's character was like built for bluff, but it was an opposed roll back in that system. And so Linda's character rolled a natural 1, and the sister rolled a natural 20 to figure out that Linda was doing something sketchy.
And it was needed to be that different.
And we determined that was what allowed the sister to detect the lie by 1. That it literally had, like in Pathfinder or something where they go up against like 10 plus their modifier, it would have been impossible without using the degree of success increase from a nat 20 or a nat 1. But here it had to be a nat 1 and a nat 20.
Don't touch a deck of many things, folks.
The point is, this up the stakes, right? Like, and you shouldn't always go after the families of the party members, but having them be included makes things bigger. Now, this is very important. What your PCs will learn, what the players will learn over multiple campaigns, even if you only do that when it's earned, and if you only do bad things when they are earned, they will learn that having a family is a liability.
If my character has a family, then the GM's just going to do terrible things to them, so I'm not going to have my character have a family.
So remember that family also sticks up for each other, and family helps each other. So think of times when having that family members would be helpful to the PCs, and try to bring them in a way so that their family member is a boon. So that it's not just like a ball and a chain that's dragging you down sometimes. Or at best, you barely even tell, except for the few times when they are a liability.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can say they can maybe be able to call upon their family for some sort of thing, or they may be able to take shelter with their family, or they may be able to do all sorts, or they may be able to like have their family make a connection for them, or
the family might have a quest for them. If the family knows what their family member is doing, maybe they hear something that is a useful rumor or piece of information, they pass it back on. It's like, oh, I heard you guys were looking for the Pirate King's treasure, and the other day, I was still working at the tavern like always, this weird pirate came in and was bragging about finding one of the lost maps that leads to the treasure. Do you want me to, like, tell you about this guy, or do you think that that's just
Or, like, up? Let's say that the PCs lose an encounter and get captured by the bad guys, and then one of the PC's families is instrumental in finding them and sending help.
Or the PC's family of, like, maybe the noble PC's family pays the ransom to the bad guys, because maybe the bad guys are the type who follow, like, those sort of medieval rules of war where you would ransom the high value targets.
And then maybe they pay the ransom, but in the ensuing conversation, there's a thing about how, said PC was supposed to be going to the autumn ball every year and hasn't been. So now that you're out, we need to make sure that everyone knows you're okay and that there's not going to be shame upon the family name after all of this. So you better go to the autumn ball, and then there's an autumn ball plotter.
And it leads into another quest, right? So make it so that your character's family is a good thing, too. Obviously, they can be put in danger. They can turn out to be secretly evil. The villain can turn out to secretly be a family member like Darth Vader. Again, spoilers for The Empire Strikes Back. Sorry. It's past the statute of limitations.
Yes. But
if you didn't know that, go read the XKCD about being the first time that you heard of Star Wars or whatever.
But I would say that, like, you probably don't want to introduce as a GM... character that the player introduced as a friendly family member was secretly evil and betraying you all along.
If you do, you need to be careful that you know your players and how they will take this. Because if the player has invested a lot of time and emotion into the backstory of their character, then and they may have invested a lot of emotion to their perception of the arc that that character would take. And so, even if you aren't intending to make one of the characters in their backstory a villain, you could still even ask the player and be like, "Hey, so I get you made these characters in your backstory, these family members, these close childhood friends. Like, how okay would you be if I like?" Some of these you haven't seen in a while. If I, like, updated their story and added additional elements and used them in a different way. For instance, maybe your childhood friend is now a member of a rival adventuring team, and you'll meet her along the way again and see if you can rekindle your friendship. But, like, how okay are you with me making that up? And they might be like, no. When I imagine my childhood friend, I don't think she could ever have become an adventurer too, because she was always so interested in research. No, because so she would have kept researching.
Yes.
And then that's how you know it's like, okay, this player has it in their head exactly who these people are, and you don't want to introduce an unexpected element. Now, you still can use this researching childhood friend and be like, well, she researched something interesting, or the bad guys are onto her research, and so she needs to hire the party members to protect her and her research as she's going to deliver it at a conference.
Or, she's discovered a new magic spell or she's working on a new magic ritual and she is looking for she wants to hire your adventuring group because she knows you can trust you to get some ingredients to perform the ritual.
Exactly. In fact, not only would I say that it's okay to use the characters when the player has such a strong idea of what they are, I would say it's even easier in some ways, and it's even more likely to be beneficial, because as long as you respect the fact that they have a very strong vision for the character and you don't negate it with how you portray them, they might be really happy to see that vision of the character that they wanted to see come to life. Now, you know your players. If your player is so picky, they'd be like, no, when she was talking about her research, she should have gotten more distracted and into it and not paid attention to us and gone on a long rant, and she didn't.
You were having a research occult magic, but she was actually more of an arcane spellcaster.
And not only that, she should have used these overly technical terms. And if they go into that much backseat quarterbacking, then and you know that your player would do this in advance, okay, then you don't need to touch those characters.
But for most players,
in fact, if you had done it, quote, right by their standards, they would have been elated, but it may be someone who is impossible to please, and so therefore your best bet is to not even try.
I mean, and sometimes you can kind of guess by how much backstory you get from the players. Or, what kind of answers you get if you ask about their character's backstory. Or is it backstory where it's my character's parents this, and they don't have names, and they're just, off in this other area? Or does it talk about, where they're from, and what kinds of things they did, and what their relationships were like, and what their goals are, and that kind of thing?
Right. And if you know your player, what their goal, even for your character's arc, right? So, my character who was abandoned by her mom and was only, survived because of her imaginary friend who was a summoner Eidolon who protected her. So, my goal was for the character to learn her own self-worth and to realize that she was someone who was valuable. And because of that, and I was her mother was a half devil and was a terrible person. So did I think she was also a summoner too, and who was one of the top advisors of the evil group that we were dealing with in the AP? No, but did that fit? Did that fit with what Linda knew that my my hope for the arc that the character might experience would be? Yes, because she got a chance to confront who her mother was, and she had also the ability for other party members to sort of validate her and tell her that didn't matter what her mother said or did, and she got to process and think about that, and then put a helm of opposite alignment on her mom.
Yes.
Brainwashing via alignment. Over and over again until she failed her saving throw.
Well, she didn't want to kill her.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Her mom was a lot nicer after she was alignment brainwashed into not being to be chaotic good instead of lawful evil. Just saying.
Yep.
So the point is that these are the types of stories that are so highly personal to your players that you want to engage them. Even if you want to have a secret, do it the way I said, where you don't tell them what you're going to do necessarily. You just say, is it okay if I add extra elements to some of these characters?
And in that case, I knew for a fact, Mark's not expecting some kind of reconciliation with this character based on how he's presented his character's
Yes,
mom.
I surprisingly got a reconciliation because of a cursed item we found earlier in the campaign, but I was not
I was not expecting you to use the helm of opposite alignment there. That was hilarious.
That's true. Kojo says sometimes a little brainwashing is good for a family. Well, you know what? Okay. That character was, I would say, my character was overall a very nice person considering how much trauma that she had been through, but she was trying her best to find a healthy worldview, but did it through like creating a secondary persona for herself, similar to the vigilante class, but before that class existed, and then just making it so this second person who was not her was awesome and admired and someone who everyone would like, and who was like as less of herself in it as possible, which is not a healthy thing to do, but for her was the way that she was processing her trauma. And so this kind of like imaginary, like going into a weird and maybe unhealthy way of dealing with things was her way.
Yes.
The point is, when you get into these kind of stories, it can really be something that has an emotional impact. And I still, I'm never going to forget that story about that character. Kojo says, better living through multiple personality. So it wasn't
exactly
dissociative identity disorder.
It was like that she had like a facade that she was using.
Yes, she knew who she was. She did not create a second personality. She simply...
Because they were in like an organization where you wanted
we
to...
were a
like,
secret society.
Vigilante organization, so she had like her public persona.
She created a public persona that was supposed to be as just very much not like her and was good at things that she wasn't good at. Because she was very shy and she wanted her public persona to be very outgoing and to be someone who would be admired. Where she thought that as a tiefling in Cheliax, that could never be her. So her persona was also a human. And there were a lot of other things like that. The point is, with these examples are helpful for illustrations, but I don't want to get too deep into the rabbit hole of just telling the story about my character. Although if you really want to know, you can watch the playlist of Linda's Council of Thieves on the Arcade Mark channel, where we go through basically the story of Elysiel the Tiefling and what happened for her family. And yes, Kojo, it was very much the Batman Bruce Wayne approach. But think of it if he started out as being Batman and then created a Bruce Wayne persona as a way to try to like to heal and to re-enter society, rather than the actual thing where Bruce Wayne created this unhinged Batman persona and then turned himself into a shell of a facade. Absolutely.
So, where were we before that?
I think we had made some of our most crucial points about using family, making sure some of the way that you do is positive, and making sure you talk carefully with your players, even if you don't give them the exact specifics, if you still want to keep some things a secret, to figure out what they're looking for, what their characters are, with the family they included. Now, the last thing that I wanted to make sure to cover is, what about the players who they left a void not because they were like, well, the GM's just going to kill my family, and not because they were just like, well, I just want to be an edgy loner, but because they didn't have time, or they
or it's like, well, this is my first character, I'm focused on making the mechanics and their personality, and like this whole backstory thing is overwhelming, or I don't like writing the backstory, I just want to roll dice.
So what you want to do with those players in general is make some proposals. Or if they're the type who you know that person is just like, I love being surprised, so you can just do anything, then you can just do that. But for a lot of people, you can make some proposals and be like, by the way, I see that you didn't say anything here on your character's backstory, but you are a fighter who's obsessed with like high quality swords, and you seem to know a lot about them in real life, and your character is constantly talking about the different parts of the sword and the sword making process. So I was wondering, what if your character's mother was a blacksmith? Because you said that you're right now shopping around.
Is she basement sword wizard?
She might be. You're shopping around to try to get your sword upgraded with this new mithril that you found, and you were trying to find someone who could make it. What if your character's mother is a blacksmith, and she would be capable of processing the sword for you at a discount?
And one thing that
in order to do so, you'll have to visit her, and she might guilt you a little bit about how you're always off on your adventures instead of running the blacksmith.
Yeah.
And then the player can be like, oh, well, and they can decide, hey, I'll get a discount on my mithril sword, and we'll find someone who can actually do the upgrades. And so you're kind of like offering an enticement, but you're also pointing out that there will be like bonds and commitments from having your family come in as well.
One good place to start as a GM if your players don't really have a backstory, is try to figure out ask them where their character is from. Because if their character is from nearby, it's a lot easier. And if your player's like, my character's from another plane. My character's the only one from this. My character is this other thing, that other thing. It's like, okay, fine. Their family is not going to show up.
My character was put to sleep by Fae for like thousands of years.
Yes, I know. Didn't do anything with that character's backstory, okay? I mean, family at least.
It was in Pathfinder Society anyway.
Yeah, but you brought him back for another campaign.
That's true.
Played.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing was that actually his backstory and families came up in some of the adventures because of the fact that there were like DC ridiculously hard checks to determine things that were common knowledge for him. So in order to make it so I didn't feel like I was trying to cheese out the adventures, I gave him really, really high knowledge back in Pathfinder First Edition. His knowledge was so high that on a natural 1, he would exceed the DC of these very hard knowledge checks by like 20.
Yes.
So I knew I would get it anyway. And so I was like, all right, GM, so I got a 60 on this DC 30 check when we were level like 3.
Yeah.
But I just want to say it's not because it was a 60, but it's because my character just grew up in this city. It's
and
on
the
my
GMs
backstory.
are always like, yeah, that's cool.
So he knows what the name of the city is because that's where he lived, and so the GMs are like, yeah, that makes sense, and it's not like I gave you a mechanical advantage.
I mean, if you don't go into the basement of Basement Sword Wizard, do you know can you prove that there's only one?
There you go. There could be a whole
whole
family of Basement Sword Wizards down in the basement,
and they have their workshop. That's how they make so many swords. It's not just one person operation.
And this PC was the one black sheep of the Basement Sword family who left to become an adventurer.
He didn't want to just stay in the basement of sword crafting.
There you go.
One basement.
Many sword wizards. So, that last tip about bringing in the people who just kind of didn't have the time or mental energy for it was the main final thing that I wanted to cover. Did you have any last tip for people too, Linda?
No, I think that's one of the... I guess, no. One other thing to consider is that while we're talking primarily about family here, you can also do this with other very close relationships. This doesn't have to all be all about, like, you know...
I mentioned a childhood friend before, and you can use any... Like, just some random passing acquaintance doesn't have the same impact here.
Close relationships from early in your character's history.
Like your childhood best friend, or, you know, like the family friend who you might as well have treated as an aunt.
Or like the mentor who taught you wizardry from a young age.
That's right. Honestly, your master or mentor, even if it was from a later age, is a very important relationship that is... close enough to family to follow many of the same ticks here.
Yes.
To the point where, like, it's stereotypical for someone's mentor or master to be killed. Like, just like, that happens, like, every time.
It's funny in the game we're playing in Changeling, where the idea is Changeling the Dreaming, so, like, story tropes really direct reality. Characters who might fall into mentor roles are like, oh gosh, I gotta be careful. The mentor role is so dangerous.
Like, I'm not mentoring these people. I'm vaguely helping them in a sarcastic, tricksy way and also screwing them over sometimes. Because if I was a mentor, I'm gonna get killed so fast. Alright, so with that then, everyone, please like and subscribe if you like this kind of content, and join us if you'd like to support us. We're going to do a poll for next Tuesday's episode of Arcade Mark and give you some XP here in a sec. So there is the... Oh, no, there's not the poll.
There's the poll,
I did not hit enter successfully.
Gosh, Mark, you got to hit enter.
I know. Why did I not hit enter? What is wrong with me? Alright, so... Your choices are build a hazard workshop. We'll build a hazard in here. Ask Arcade Mark for Save My Game Q&A questions. GM Tools Extreme Climates, where we'll talk about this weird climates. Arcade Mark Plays, we'll play a computer game in here. Ancestry Guide for a Battle Zoo Ancestry. We've covered She and Dungeons so far. There's a lot of good options there. I mean, She would, and also another example of an ancestry that would not want to become a mentor.
Yes, absolutely.
They would be like, no, no, no. My plot armor is going to protect me, but not if I'm a mentor. I lose all my plot armor. And then 6 is other, but you have to propose for the other. So Kojo has selected our ancestry guy
And
for
we know
a
that
Battle Zoo ancestry.
So that's going to be for next Tuesday. On Saturday, we are going to be continuing
with the sound one hand clapping as Linda goes into deeper and more difficult levels.
As I continue to sing, hum, and speak my way through puzzles.
That's correct. Or, in some cases, speak our way to chat in a way that does weird things to the puzzles. But that's funny.
That was funny. It's like, oh, we're talking to chat, and the puzzle is going everywhere. Let's wait until we're done talking.
All right. And Kojo says, glad you're all okay after the big freeze.
Yep.
I will say that after shoveling the big freeze, my body is not completely okay. But it was okay enough for Arcane Mark, because it's fun hanging out with you guys. All right. Take care, everyone. If you, too, have been big freezed, try to unfreeze yourself. And
hope everybody's able to get out to whatever you need to.
Bye.
Bye.